Hey everyone, welcome to Fangirls Over 40. Today we'll speak with John Jackson Miller. He is the author you are looking for. Hello there to you, John.
Hello.
It's very lovely to meet you. To a
Glad
fellow
to be here.
Gen Xer, to Fangirls Over 40. We're so glad you're joining us. So there is one question we're going to start off with. So John Jackson Miller, is it John, JJ, or is it the whole spiel?
It's the working name is John Jackson Miller. The name is just John. I
Very good.
worked for a time for a company called Miller Publishing. I was not related to anybody there, but if I wanted to get my mail, I figured I'd better have both names. And there was also a another science fiction author already named John Joseph Miller, and so I figured, okay, I'd better go my own direction there.
I suppose as a fellow, it's like saying we're not old. We can't be old. I keep fretting. I'm going to be 50 this year. And I said it can't be happening. So, growing up, did you see yourself as a nerd or a fan geek, or did you just do your thing?
I knew what I was good at and I knew what I liked. I was a scrawny kid and I understood sports and I watched them, but I wasn't very good at them. And I was somebody who read and very early and started collecting comics age 6. My mother was a grade school librarian and she did not throw my comics away. She had me put them in order, and that, of course,
Very good.
continued on into my later life. And so among my list of projects, I've done several comic book checklist and price guide things where it's all about helping other people organize their collections. But yeah, I mean, there was that, and was just a voracious reader. Back in the days when we had encyclopedias, they got me a set of encyclopedias and I read them front to back, and just absorbed everything. And having this period of the late 70s heading in through the 80s where there was just all sorts of entertainments, not specifically designed for my age group, but which were things that were appealing to us. Star Wars, Star Trek, among them, but there were also many other franchises. And I also had an older sister who was, definitely of the baby boomer age group, and she was able to introduce me to a lot of pop culture. And she worked at a department store in the record department, so she was able to get me the Star Wars posters that were in the middle of the LP, the album. Some poor people got their albums with no posters in it, I guess. But
for shame.
But that was cool, and she made sure that I got the action figures, and then when the video games came around, she made sure I got video games that were reasonably close to what I was interested in. And so it was a case where my parents had an additional person who was there helping me to accumulate all the stuff that I was interested in.
So you can blame your sister for bringing you into the world of fandom, really.
Yeah, the novel Kenobi is dedicated to her for making sure that she I got in to see the movie because she was the one who took me in. And several times we couldn't get in.
There were several attempts. Okay,
yeah, back in the day.
Where did you see Star Wars, the very first one, and who did you go with?
I saw it with Kathy, my sister. It was the Whitehaven Twin Theater, which was this theater that actually was a big long theater, and they divided it in two insanely long ways to make two very, very, very long, very narrow theaters. It's like watching a movie in a coal mine, or a tunnel. And what was significant about that is it was about a block and a half from Graceland. So this is in Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh my God.
And this was the theater that Elvis Presley would see movies in. He would have them close down the theater after midnight, and he would have parties with his friends there. And it is believed that the last film that he saw there, which would have been, in
Huh.
June of 1977, was Star Wars.
Yes. That is actually a cool piece of maybe trivia that we should
Oh
know.
yeah.
Now, like I suppose all the rest of us oldies, we did get you got the toys and all that. Is there a particular Star Wars toy that you might still have in your possession from that time,
Well,
or are they all gone?
I have
Oh, okay.
everything pretty much
Oh,
that
great.
I ever got. Actually, there's one toy that's missing right now, and I've been tearing
Uh-oh.
the house apart trying to find it, because the very first set of action figures my parents got, and this was yeah, a good deal after the movie had come out. They got me a Darth Vader, an R2D2, and a 3PO, but the 3PO was a bad mold, so his leg
Oh,
was frozen.
oh,
And my father took it on the workbench, snapped the leg off, and then put a pin in it.
oh my God.
Well, he repaired it so that it actually,
Okay.
the leg could move, but it
Yeah.
would flip back and forth like a rocket dancer's leg. And
Oh my God.
this came up again years later, because I got my daughter a giant tauntaun, which went with the night, the big 12-inch doll figures,
So one of that.
and the tauntaun also had a frozen leg, and
Oh.
so I had to break that leg off and put
Oh,
a
poor
screw in it.
Tonton.
And again, I was doing a photo shoot in a snowstorm a few weeks ago here, and I was like, I could use that tauntaun. Can't find it anywhere, and it's very large.
Uh-oh.
It's here somewhere, but I have the kind of house where it is possible to lose a tauntaun.
I'm just going to ask you here. As we know, the comics, they were basically your beginning, your foundation. What was the very first comic book you ever bought?
Um, it's hard to actually say specifically. My guess is that it was an issue of Uncle Scrooge, which was
Oh
the
my God.
Carl Barks character. Actually, it's amusing that people think, my company name, my studio name is Faraway Press, and that's my
Right.
website,
Mm-hmm.
farawaypress.com, and that's
Yeah.
also in my handle on Twitter, which is JJM Faraway.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I was using that long before I had anything to do with Star Wars
Mm-hmm.
professionally. I had a column in Comics Buyer's Guide, and before that I had a comic strip that I had drawn, and the title of it was Faraway Looks, and Faraway
Hmm.
Looks was a phrase that Uncle Scrooge uses, and
Okay.
when he gets that faraway look, either when he's thinking about
Oh,
money,
yes.
or glittering Goldie, the character that is there.
Absolutely.
And so I just always sort of had that word somewhere associated in my projects.
Yeah,
But yeah, that predates my work on Star Wars by a good long while.
absolutely. Now, I hope I get this right. In 2005, you did Star Wars Empire with Darth Vader, correct?
Yeah.
I hope
Yeah, that
I've
was an
got all
issue.
this right.
Yeah, that was a
Uh,
single issue of the regular series, Star Wars
uh,
Empire.
Now, my question here would be, Vader is like the character. He's now we know
Yeah.
he's little Anakin and now he's Vader. How did you feel when you started writing about him knowing what he was and what he was going to become? I mean,
Well,
where did you go with that?
well, it was interesting because, again, it was the very first comic book I had done
Hmm.
officially for Star Wars, and also the
Yeah,
first thing I had done for Dark Horse
I love Dark Horse. Yeah.
publishers.
Hmm.
So, I'd written Iron Man for a year before that, but
Hmm.
it was getting
Yes.
into a new world. And one of the
Hmm.
things which I was told, after I submitted my first draft of the script, is Darth Vader doesn't say much. We try to
Yeah.
really, a little of him goes a long way. He doesn't get into real
Yeah.
chatty, conversations with people.
Yeah.
We try to really limit it,
Hmm.
and it was like, okay, that's very useful, and I use that. I've used it a lot since.
Because I mean, it is something that people say, yeah, Vader is Star Wars. I mean, he is the most iconic character, and to write him but not write him at the same time
Right, right.
seems to be quite the challenge.
Yeah,
Really.
no, I mean he's very visual, so it's a
Yes.
good thing to underwrite him.
See, the moment you signed your contract with Star Wars, like obviously this would have been back Lucasfilm and all this. How did you feel? How, like what came to the forefront of you and you said, "Oh my God, I'm writing for Star Wars."
It was just it was really very I was delighted. For the one thing, yeah, it's like, yeah, this is really cool, but also it was a sense of, okay, here's the next chapter, because again,
Right.
I had done stuff for Marvel, and
Hmm.
there was a few months in between there, after I was no longer on Iron Man, where
Hmm.
I was looking for what the next thing to do would be, or if there would be a
Okay.
next thing.
Okay.
And then I got both projects for The Simpsons and Star Wars
Hmm.
at the same time, and then also
Oh.
I also got, I think it was in that stretch that I got I know I had a Star Trek project approved, and I think it was in that stretch where I was my first prose wasn't going to be for Star Wars; it was going to be for Star Trek,
All right.
because they had an ebook series called Star Trek Starfleet Corps of Engineers,
Oh,
and
yes.
I had written a
Okay.
Scotty story years ago
All right.
for a contest, the
Hmm.
Strange New Worlds contest that they had.
Right.
That didn't win and get published, but I had this
It's
other
okay.
idea, actually two other ideas that I'd submitted, and then one of them got picked up for Starfleet Corps of Engineers just in
Okay.
time for that line to be canceled. And so that book did not happen. And what I did was I basically took one of the concepts from it
Hmm.
and used it in a later prose book that I did. The
Hmm.
first prose series that I did for Star Wars was Lost Tribe of the Sith. One of the short stories in there, or actually the novella that's in there, called Pandemonium,
Hmm.
has this element about basically an analog version of the internet on this planet that doesn't have digital technology. And I had used it in the Star Trek story, and I said, well, I might as well use it over here. So uh, I'm
Classic.
I'm environmental. I reuse the same things.
It's nice to be able to kind of move those between the fandoms, isn't it? Kind of helps you
Yeah.
out. Now, two quick questions on the comics. Okay. My daughter is a big Halo fan. So,
Mm-hmm.
when how familiar were you with Halo before you did the comic?
Yeah, I did a graphic novel or a story in a graphic novel for Halo in a book called Tales from Slip Space. I
Mhm.
had not played Halo. I had my kids had the game, and I'd watched some of it. But I by that point I had deliberately known, because I had already done the Mass Effect comics,
Yep.
and I knew at that point to say, any story you give me, please let me, set it well apart from any continuity that requires me to actually, play the game, because the people can tell if you don't know.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
and and even though I had a lot of help from the editor and from the folks at 343,
Mhm.
doing Halo, my first prose story for Halo, and also that that first comic story, those are both stories that more or less are generic science fiction stories where
Mhm.
I imported them into the world.
Right.
I did do a few issues of a book called The Rise of Atriox for Halo, where
Mhm.
it is much more wallowing in continuity, and that was one where I had to have a lot of help from the studio, and that's really difficult work to do, because you're working on something that is simultaneously being worked on and developed by multiple people who
Mhm.
have their own views of the characters and how they should interact and that sort of thing. So in general, I have done some more video game stuff.
Mhm.
I don't do a lot of it. I do have a new book coming out at the end of February that is tied to the new video game from Ubisoft, which is called Skull and Bones, which is a pirate ship game.
Right.
That was one where, because I knew what my limitations were, I brought in my friend James Mishler, who is a game designer, to co-write it with me. And basically he does all the world wrangling in terms of understanding the history of the world and the factions and everything, and then I handle the dialogue and the action and the characters stuff.
It's always good to have someone behind you who can say, hey,
Yeah,
you need to do something about that. Speaking of continuity, just probably one of the contentious words in the Star Wars universe ever, one could come to, writing the Kenobi book. Oh my God. Now I have to say, I will probably probe on this the most because it is now my favorite book ever. I have to say, I think I've probably read it and listened to it about 100 times now at this point. Really, I'm sorry, but I'm so gonna geek out on this because.
Well, I've got like 6 or 7 copies, or
wonderful,
like 16 or 17 different versions over here, so they keep printing more.
I know what are you gonna change? But because this Obi-Wan is not our Clone Wars Obi-Wan. It's not our prequel Obi-Wan. This is just what you did to bring this Obi-Wan to life was just, for me, absolutely amazing, because he's not yet to, our old Alec Guinness, he's just starting out. How much of the old Obi-Wan did you decide to bring out and feature in this book, making the decisions of his story arc?
Well, the book is about, he's got to make the change from being Obi-Wan Kenobi Jedi Master to crazy old Ben. In fact, the original name of the book was Ben. And because that was what it was. Idea had been, he's the mysterious stranger with a past who wanders into town. He's got to learn to stop reacting to things as a Jedi, and if he's gonna be doing anything heroic, it's gonna have to be in Clark Kent mode, where he's not not actually involved. And then I immediately get him involved with a local family and the politics of their area, and also the Tusken Raiders of the region. And he is more or less the catalyst for everything. It was originally going to be a graphic novel and not a novel. It ended up taking 6 years on the shelf before I got the chance to do it as a novel. And it was really clear that it needed to be a novel, because my intention had always been that 90% of it would be from the point of view of everybody else. And that's not really necessarily the easiest thing to do in comics. It also would have been a very, very, very long comic book story. They do adapt old stories every so often for comics, and while I would enjoy the challenge of doing it, I can't begin to tell you how many pages it would take.
Wow.
but yeah, and so that is the kind of, the heavy lifting that book has to do is to introduce him to the world and introduce the world to him without him giving away where he's come from.
I have to say, for me, the relationship I enjoyed most in the book, besides him and Rue, because I just loved Rue, and everybody now wants a Rue. We all want the Rue, but his relationship with Annalene was, I loved that. And every time she said her name Annie or anyone else, you could, without even seeing Obi-Wan, you could feel the pain. I mean, it's like, that's not Annie and Annalene.
and I wasn't even really necessarily conscious of that all the time. There's a line in there that she says, which is totally accidental, which is it was something like my life is not very exciting. And I don't just do crazy things. I don't what's the line? It's something.
You're gonna have me look it up.
It's some line like little Annie here doesn't just go running off every time a stranger shows up. there's an unintentional echo
Yes.
there,
Oh.
and yeah, I really, I can't remember if I intended that or not. Whatever is in my notes is what I came up with. That's one of
Yeah.
the reasons that I do the notes online,
Mhm.
is those are usually, not always, written somewhat close to when I actually wrote the book. I kind of fell
Okay.
behind in more recent years on my Star Trek
Yes.
books,
Yes. Mhm.
and my book Star Wars Canto Bight. I only got the notes on that one, which came out in 2017. I only got the notes for that up just before Christmas, and so I'm trying to remember here what I was thinking. But in that case, yeah, I don't think that was an intentional thing. But I've got a number of things like that you
Yeah.
have to, if it works, it's a happy accident.
Yeah. And it's great because all through that book, I suppose for all of us who watch the Clone Wars and just getting little reminders of the past. But on the other side is I loved the Tusken, the
Yeah,
Tusken leader, and my daughter, big Tusken fan. She has a gaffy stick, you know. So she's been listening to it on Audible. She was it's almost a story just about the Tuskens. I was like, well, yeah, I suppose
yeah.
you could see it that way too. But I think that I loved how it was woven in there. And how did you come up with the character of Plug Eye?
Okay, so the Yark character was a
Mhm.
relatively early addition to the book. I don't know that Yark was in the very first draft when we were doing it as a graphic novel, but that role grew more
Mhm.
as we went along, and a lot of the actual nature of Tuscan society had already been established in Tim Truman's comic book storyline, which was called Outlander.
Mm.
And so, words like Utman for the Outlanders,
Mhm.
and that sort of thing, and the Shard Het character came from that. And
Okay.
so I was obliged in those days that I needed to actually reflect, that situation.
Mhm.
And then what I did was I took that part and then I layered over the top of it a mythology having to do with the two sons.
Mhm.
And then I said, okay, what happens if there's a group of these Tuscans that is just shell shocked, that is just traumatized because of what Anakin did here a few years
Yeah.
ago?
Mhm.
And they're really on the edge and they have been victimized by this scheme that's
Yeah.
going on,
Mhm.
and so I said, okay, here we go, and then I got into the family issues that we see with
Oh,
a Yark,
yeah.
and that was another thing where I was like, okay, well, this is a good place for Annalene to see some parallels, and
Mhm.
where Obi-Wan can come to the conclusion that okay, yes, she's actually a very good person,
Yeah.
and these are the interactions that we get. So yeah, I that's one of those books where I got to the end of it and I said, that's as good as I'm going to be able to do something like that.
Well, it is. It's just we love it. We love it. I know a few other friends of mine, and I've said, wouldn't we have loved to have seen that as a TV series? Sorry, but we would have
Well,
loved
I
to
mean,
have seen that.
it's
Oh wow, it would have
it's an
been great.
arrival story, so
Yeah.
it's natural that you couldn't do it 10 years on,
Yeah.
but there are
Exactly.
major elements of it that you could do.
Mhm.
He's probably moving around quite a lot, so
I'm going to jump fandoms over to Star Trek because we
mhm.
love Star Trek. Um, I said Strange New Worlds. Now there's the new TV series, obviously,
Yep.
Strange New Worlds. Now, what in particular have you enjoyed writing about Captain Pike and his crew?
This is something where I was approached to start writing books with the streaming series after having done four novels for the earlier TV shows. So those were all very much an exercise in nostalgia because most of the stuff
Hmm.
that I was writing about was all shows that had come on 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Whereas these were actually projects that were in motion at the time. And so
Hmm.
one of the funny things, you have the graphic of Enterprise War here on the video. When I was writing that book, that's the first book about the Anson Mount Captain Pike. I had no idea, nobody really knew whether he would be popular or recognizable or anything. And so I had urged them, please put the Enterprise on the cover of the book, because that's what people are going to recognize. And of course, then I'm near the end of the book, and we're starting to writing the book, and we're starting to see the episodes, and we're saying, oh gosh, he's this magnetic portrayal here. And I realized, oh gosh, we've made a terrible mistake, and it's too late to change it.
Shoot.
And it is too late to change it, but it is noteworthy that the German version, the Czech version, all of the other versions of this novel that I have seen all have Anson Mount's Captain Pike on the cover.
I'll point this way, there he is.
Yeah, and then of course with High Country, we were like, okay, we're not even going to mess around.
Just put him on. It's him. It's him.
No Enterprise at all. People recognize him. No, it's just a basic marketing thing where there are Star Wars novels. You will see lightsabers on covers, whether the lightsabers are actually used in the book or not. And of course, in the Kenobi case, barely. And the Enterprise plays the same role on the Star Trek cover as this is the thing you can see from way across the room and say, aha, that's a Star Trek book, even if you can't see the logo.
Exactly. And I mean, geeks like us can see that from a mile away. It's not that far. Now, in fairness, I do have to point out that, Anson's hair is not as high as it should be on the book cover. It should be like up here.
Well, this could be ascribed to the conditions on the planet that he's actually trapped on. So
the hair has wilted a bit. Yes, exactly.
Well, no, he's trapped on in the High Country. He's trapped on the planet
that's right. Yes,
he's trapped on the planet where technology does not work, and so there are no blow dryers here. And
no hair product.
Yeah, no, not well. I'm sure if there's anything, it's just like grease. I mean, it's
exactly.
So I mean, and that book is my other. I was going to say it's a Western, although my editor says it's not a. She got to the end of it, and she says it's not a Western. It's a Star Trek, or rather, it's a science fiction novel with horses in it, and that works for me.
That is cool too, because I love horses. Now, I just want to ask you, Comic-Cons. Where are you going? Where's your next Comic-Con you're going to be at?
Okay, the very next one will be in Seattle. That is Emerald City. That is at the end of February, the beginning of March. I have another one which is in the middle of March every year. That is Mid-South-Con. That's in my hometown in Memphis. I go back there. I've gone back for the last 15 or 20 of them to go to that. Just announced today that I'm at Dragon Con in over Labor Day weekend, and there's almost a dozen more conventions and other appearances that I've got worked out that we just have not announced yet, including some stuff coming up before the release of the new novel.
Well, we'll go there in 1 second, but hey, we would love to have you over in the UK and Ireland at some point.
It would be nice. I don't have a passport. This is I will be getting one. This is one of those things where it's always been complicated by the fact that the licenses are broken up into multiple different countries, and so I might write a book for a publisher in one country, but that's not the promotional budget for publisher X, it cannot be spent outside of their zone. So basically, more or less, the convention needs to bring me in, and so
I think I might have to go talk to our folks at Dublin Comic Con and see what we can do.
Well, that's kind of how that works. I am going to get the passport. It's been too long. We would
love to have you here. We would love to have you.
Go. Appreciate it.
Now, the other thing I'm going to ask you is, obviously, you have something coming out really soon. I know we can't talk about it, but
we can talk very briefly about it.
Quickly.
I have to keep to what has been announced so far, and that is Star Wars: The Living Force, which is my new novel Random House Worlds. It comes out April 9th in audiobook, ebook, and hardcover. And it is the Jedi Council on spring break. It is the first novel. Is the first novel with the entire Jedi Council. It's set 1 year before the Phantom Menace, and it's got Obi-Wan Kenobi in it. It's also got Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon sets the thing in motion. He challenges.
Of course, he does.
Challenges the Jedi Council, and he says, you guys need to get out of this this council chamber and actually meet the people, because you're here, debating these intergalactic events. And you used to be Jedi who actually went out and did things, and and why don't you go out and try to meet the people? And a significant part of this book takes place on a particular planet. That planet has a map that is included. It's printed in every edition of the book. I just done the same thing with the Strange New Worlds book, where that's actually got 5 maps in it.
Oh, we're going to have a lot of fun. This is going to be great. Well, all I can say is this is so fortuitous because I turned 50 in April. So your book is basically my birthday present to me.
Well, there you go.
I'm very excited about it, I have to say. So I want to thank you for taking time out, especially time out between time zones, and giving us some of your time. And God, just thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing all of your new writing, and hopefully we'll get to see you in person at some point at some con on some continent.
and people can find any updates I would have on that. As I said, JJM Faraway on Twitter, farawaypress.com is my website. And then I am John Jackson Miller on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok now. So yes, until people see me in person, may the Force live long and prosper.
Thank you so much, and may the Force be with you always.